So what I'm planning to do tonight is to share some of my typical PowerPoint presentation on zero waste to do two things. One, to show how close Broome County could be to zero waste, what a good job we're doing right now, and talk about a couple of things that we've talked about in the past. One, of course, is what Chris Berger was talking about, the need for a composting or anaerobic digestion facility, because organic waste makes up not only an important fraction of the waste stream, and if you compost in addition to recycling, you can almost double your diversion rate, but it's a problematic part of the waste stream, producing a lot of methane in landfills, which is contributing to global warming. So there's two big reasons to do something about composting. And the other thing is our other scheme, which has got Ellen and others, Maria, very involved, is developing a reuse and repair center, which is a very important part of zero waste. And tonight I want to talk about the embellishment of a zero waste, of a reuse and repair center, which is to incorporate a zero waste research center to integrate some of the local professors and students. Anyway, so here, a book again, here's yet another plug. I don't make any money on this book, so don't think I'm doing this for money, but this book is available around here for $5. And on the Chelsea Green has actually got a sale on, and they're offering this for $7.90. The full title of this book was The Zero Waste Solution, Untrashing the Planet, One Community at a Time. And that, I think, is the most exciting part of zero waste. It connects the ordinary person in their everyday lives to a planetary problem. And that is the need to convert from a linear society to a circular society to reduce global warming, amongst other things. And again, I've stressed that the waste problem is not going to be solved with magic machines, but with better organization, better education, and better industrial design. And that last thing is where the Zero Waste Research Center should come in to play. So zero waste again, to get close to zero waste, we need community responsibility at the back end of disposal. And I think we're doing a great job with that in Binghamton and Broome County. Industrial responsibility at the front end, which is the slowest thing happening. This is the thing that's keeping, for instance, San Francisco down to 80% diversion, is that industry has been very slow. But we have to bifurcate industry responsibility because it's good and bad. The industries which are making durable products are fantastic with zero waste. Companies like Toyota, Xerox, other copy machines, Fuji, they're way ahead. Their companies are getting 90% reduction in materials reuse in their products. They're ahead of the game. But the wretched other industry, which makes non-durable goods, particularly throwaway, single-use items, single-use plastics in particular, are a menace. We are their threat. A zero waste strategy doesn't want throwaway objects, and that's a big struggle, of course. Good political leadership, and I think we can get that. We got a councillor from a trustee from village of Endicott on tonight. We know we got good political leaders now at Endicott. We got 3 good ones, and we need the involvement of universities. We want academic responsibility. All right. So the 10 steps to zero waste, which I've talked about many hundreds of times around the planet, there are all the 10 steps. I don't know if you have to do this, but I've got the pictures in along the side, and sometimes I have to move the pictures in order to see all the boxes here. So source separation we have in Binghamton. Door-to-door collection we have in Binghamton. Composting, we have at least some composting in the sense that the county has a wonderful scheme where if you go to the landfill, you can get one of the home composting kits for half price, for $45 instead of $90. My wife and I, we've got 2 of them, and we love them. They do a very, very good job in our back garden. We do it throughout the winter, and it works very, very well. Recycling, Binghamton, Broome County has been ahead of the game for many, many years on a good recycling program. Community reuse and repair, well, there are small scale operations, obviously the ones which are throughout the country, Salvation Army, Goodwill Industries, they are present in the county, several of them. And we have little operations like Thrifty Shopper. All of these my wife and I use frequently, even drive to Ithaca for some of their reuse operations. But we want one, a much bigger one, a community-based one which will create many community jobs, we hope, many opportunities for artisans to make, repair things on site, etc., etc. Got lots of good ideas, and Maria and Ellen, George, and others are very busy working on a business plan. Once that's in place, then we'll go for funding, and hopefully that will take off. It's so positive. I don't think we're going to get much resistance from anybody. Now, the reason I'm talking about it tonight is step 6. I want to see a zero waste research center. And my hope is that this community reuse and repair center will be large enough to have quite a considerable space for education, for students to come in from BOCES, from Binghamton, and study some of the things which people are throwing away, the things which are breaking. You know, what you get in reuse and repair centers are multiple copies of things which break down, fans and toasters and all those kind of things. And as well as repairing it, people should be looking at why these things need repairing. Why can't they be built better? And that's an easy and a clean place for people to start examining these in this case, a reusable fraction. But a dirtier operation is to actually look at the residuals at the landfill or before the landfill. And that's where Rossano Ercolini comes in. I want to share with you, I put it in my email, but let me say it again. Rossano Ercolini led the anti-incineration movement in Italy. I started to help him in 1996. That became so successful, it morphed into the zero waste movement. And I want him to come on our program, on our Zoom call, and explain what they have going. And particularly, they were the first community in Italy, in fact, in Europe, to set up a zero waste research center under their waste program. And they've had some very exciting results. I think he can show you the facility that they have. It's rather grandiose. They started off with a little museum of bad design, which has caught people's imagination. And then they've worked with professors in cyberspace and locally, and they've worked with local industries. So for instance, they got a company to make reusable diapers in the Capannori area. They have worked with the with the paper industry. Capannori happens to be adjacent to the biggest paper industry in Italy, possibly in Europe. And one of the problems of paper recycling is you get gunge left over, which is largely plastics. And they've developed an industry which uses these leftover plastics to make new products. So they're very happy to not only show what local people can do to reduce their waste, the individual responsibility, but what local industries can do to contribute to this whole thing. So they're very creative. And also, they've got 4 community reuse repair operations going, and they're very exciting. I mean, they have a van which goes out and collects reusable things, and I'm sure you'll have lots of pictures to show us. In fact, I'll let you into a secret. Every single thing that I've wanted to do with zero waste, Capannori has attempted to do it. So they're a little workshop for crazy ideas. And then the other ones, I think the banning of single-use plastics. That is a huge movement at the moment, with Judith Enck leading Beyond Plastics and another group, worldwide group, working with Gaia called the. It's got 4 letters. Anyway, it's all about banning single-use plastics. The fear is that the oil industry, seeing the phase out of coal and oil and gas, wants to take all those raw materials and make plastics out of them. That's their solution. And of course, those plastics are all ending up either in the ocean or into landfills, and heaven forbid, in cement kilns. So we have a huge problem right now of the plastics industry trying to persuade people that they're a green solution, because these plastics are going to go to cement kilns, which saves money on fuels. It's all totally bogus, because the zero waste strategy is a far better solution to what to do with plastics through reuse, recycling, and redesign. In other words, if you can't find a use for them, then you shouldn't be making them. So that's where the Zero Waste Research Center comes in. Okay, enough about that. Step 8 is the pay as you throw for residuals. And of course, we have that in Broome County. And that's great. Finally, we don't have this in Broome County, although we have something along the lines. I mean, I think we're moving in the right direction. When you go to the county landfill, there's a place to drop off things. There's a place for builders to drop off construction material. There's a place for householders to drop off yard waste and so on. And of course, there are places in the county where you can drop off electrical goods, fluorescent bulbs, paints, and so on. All of that is good. But Nova Scotia has gone one step further and has actually built a residual separation facility in front of their landfill. So nothing goes to the landfill. This is on top of an aggressive recycling and composting program. So we really are talking about residuals. They go to a residual separation facility, which then stabilizes the dirty organic fraction, which in our case will be quite large because we're not doing any composting. But if we did composting, you could reduce the dirty organic fraction because you'd be getting far more clean organics going into composting or anaerobic digestion. Okay, so let's go on. And I'm having trouble. Oh, there we go. So daughter, so there's San Francisco, and this is to underline what Chris Berger was saying a couple of weeks ago. We have two. We have recyclables and we have residuals, and we pay for the residuals. That's good. But we need that green container for the compostables or the anaerobic digestion fraction. Those are picked up once a week in San Francisco. And if they can do it in a big city like San Francisco for a little space, we should be able to do it in Binghamton. But of course, you need a facility to handle it. And from a world perspective, 50 to 60% of the waste stream is organic. So we could reduce the amount going to landfills by 50 to 80% around the world. I don't want to go into that, although we could do some of that. I think we may be doing some of that. Community composting. I like vines. I think vines with the vines gardens, I hope that could be expanded. When you talk about community gardens, it's a good PR, I think, for community composting. Because if you have a community garden, then the next step is to collect clean organic waste from the community and make sure that you have compost bins and things. I noticed that we have that in the Osingo Park. They have areas where people can grow their own food, and I see they have composting facilities over there. So I wonder if vines could be, I think we should have vines on this, one of these calls in the future. Ask them to come on. And of course, we've already heard from Chris, and we've heard from the fellow from Cornell, whose name I forgot for a moment. But community composting, where you do the composting and then use the compost to grow food in which the whole community can share. You need some space for that. I said, say, we have Vines Community Gardens, we have Cornell Agricultural Extension. And just to show you what community composting could look like in Indonesia, here I'm being shown around by a gentleman called Yobel. Yobel is a member of Gaia, and he's a very fine activist in Indonesia. And we're talking to a fellow who runs composting in a local park. This is a local park, and he's showing us the different ways on a small scale. There's our container. Looks like one of our containers. No, it isn't quite, but similar, that we have in Broome County, and different ways of composting yard waste and so on, food waste, etc. Little place for recycling, little enclosed container. There's also a playground for kids. There's a place where they're making biogas and cooking, making coffee and things for the volunteers. There's a place where you can drop off your compost, a place that you can help yourself to compost and grow your own food and take plants and things. It's very communal. And you can see it's surrounded by housing. And so this is lovely for the local people. Again, I would stress that if you want to use organics in agriculture, you must get them clean, which I believe rules out any notion of dropping off organics in side of the road containers, which is what they were doing in Italy for a while. That's why we need door-to-door collection. And to show you just how incredibly good people can be with good education, this is an extraordinary story. This is from Onani in Basque Country in Spain. This community did door-to-door collection where they hung the organic waste in brown containers on hooks on a wall. A very neat system. And they were getting, oh, I had to cut off. You have to move the pictures now. I got to go back. You have to move the pictures to the other side so you can see at the bottom. Oh, I can't do it now. Come on. I'm moving. Oh, okay. Right. The purity of this organic waste was 99.76%. I mean, it's incredible. If you can duplicate that, you're working wonders. But that's what's possible with a good educational program. And of course, what helped the educational program in this case is that they wanted to build, the region wanted to build an incinerator in their community. And they were persuaded that the way to beat the incinerator was to have an aggressive recycling and composting program. And they actually got well over 80% diversion in their program. And a key component was the organics. I don't know why this happens. Every so often I can't go forward. Oh, there we go. Now, in San Francisco, and again, I think this is something that we should bear in mind, I would assume that restaurants and hotels in the Broome County pay private contractors to take away their waste. If that's the case, then they might be interested in a system in which in San Francisco, it's 25% cheaper for restaurants and hotels to put out clean organic waste than it is to put out mixed waste. So there's an economic incentive which works. And these restaurant workers are very, very proud, incidentally, of what they're achieving. These are in Fisherman's Wharf, where you get all the fish restaurants. Now, the reason that you have to do this is the composting for San Francisco. It's about 70 miles away. So you think of that, the transport costs are huge, one of the biggest costs of their program. But you notice this low-tech composting operation is surrounded by farmland, and the farmers are using the compost to grow fruit and vegetables, which go back to these restaurants in San Francisco. So they really have, or attempting to close the loops. But one of the most exciting things, and I don't know whether or not the wine industry in the Lake Cayuga and the other lakes in the area. The wonderful New York State wine industry would be interested in the compost. Certainly in San Francisco, sorry, in Northern California, they're very interested. 200 vineyards are using the compost from the San Francisco composting facility. And the reason is it's a very, very hot up there in Northern California, very, very hot, as you know. And this is a way of reducing irrigation needs in summer because the compost has a lot of moisture and that supplies water slowly to the roots of the plant. So that's why the vintners like this system. Okay. And there's a low-tech composting operation in Italy, and it gives me an excuse for mentioning again Enzo Favorino. And incidentally, if we get Rossano, we could probably also get Enzo Favorino, who probably knows more about composting in Europe than any other person, who's fought hardest to get legislation into Europe, which treats, there's a very strong pro-incineration lobby in Europe. And they have put all kinds of restrictions on landfilling and the amount of organic waste that can go into landfilling, which is sensible, but it's used by the incinerator industry to build incinerators. And instead, Enzo and his colleagues were able to persuade Europe that composting and mechanical and biological treatment facilities were an alternative way of stabilizing the material going to landfill. So Enzo is very important in the zero waste movement in Europe, in Italy, and in Europe general. And I give you the one contribution which really he is the father of. Farmers in the Milan area went to the Agricultural Institute where he works near Milan. And they said, we need more organic material for our soil. Where can we get it? And Enzo said, well, there's plenty of organic waste in the domestic waste stream, but you can only use it in agriculture if you get it clean. And the only way you can get it clean is door-to-door collection, porta a porta. And that became the first step, the first plank, the first major change in the way that Italy had handled their waste for years and years and years. For years and years and years, the way that the average citizen handled his or her waste was to take it from their house, walk 50 yards, 100 yards, and dump it into a gray container at the side of the streets. And the first development was to change that into a different colored containers for plastics, paper, metals, glass, and eventually organics. But then with Enzo, there we saw the door-to-door collection, porta a porta, for clean organics. And when they started door-to-door collection, the miracle was people liked it. You didn't get the opposition. A, because it was saving money. It was saving money on tipping fees. It was saving money on transport for both recyclables and compostables. And it was creating jobs. You needed people employed to organize this. You needed more people to collect in small trucks these materials. And the other thing was, for tourist areas, they were getting, people were excited because the tourists don't like to see these overflowing containers at the side of the road. And so when people were having this taken away from their doorstep, it was convenient for them, and it made their lovely towns, their lovely cities, much more attractive to tourists. And in fact, when this first started in the 1990s, in Lazio province, within a few months, they were getting 60% diversion simply by this introduction of porta a porta, door-to-door collection. And now, of course, they have communities over 80 and 90%. I just wanted to show you again on the theme of what to do with organics. This is another possibility for Broome County. I don't know how seriously it's been discussed in Broome. Maybe Deborah can talk to us about this, but vermiculture, you can do indoors, and therefore you can do it in a city. I literally stood in this facility. I couldn't smell anything, And yet I was told there was 50 tons of cow manure in those troughs. This is worms, vermiculture, um, doing a wonderful job producing a very high quality compost, and they can deal with lots of things. So it seems to me that might be viable even in Endicott if you can persuade people that the companies that are willing to do this, and they are persuaded when you visit the facilities that the odors are under control. The last thing we want to do is to stink up Endicott. Now, the other thing, I'm not sure if this has been is adaptable to North America, but it's certainly in many countries in Asia now, they're using black soldier fly larvae in industrial facilities. They harvest these larvae, which then in shelving, and they got a large amount of space, 24,000 square feet of where these larvae are in trays. Here you see I pulled one out, and that's organic waste, which these larvae have consumed. Again, no odors. In all of these facilities, you've got to be aware of one thing: raw organic waste, when it comes into these facilities, especially if it's hung around somewhere for a few days, is going to stink. And that's an inevitable, almost an intractable problem. How long does it take to unload those trucks? Have you got pumps and air extraction systems which deal with that incoming odor, which has nothing to do with the facility itself? These little microbes, these larvae, they don't make any odors. Anyway, the two products that come out of this facility, and then if you want the details there, the products are a chicken feed and fish farm. You've got food for fish farms and chicken feed of these larvae. They dry them, they microwave them, they do something to them, and they can feed them to chickens. And compost as well, high grade compost. The soil, so you harvest the larvae at the end and the soil, and you can use it. Okay, as I say, a big development of this in China and Malaysia, I've mentioned. And I don't know, I really don't know if there's been much of I've looked it up on the internet, and all they have is they sell these flies for people that want to do it in their own compost pile, privately. The beauty of these flies, the first thing these larvae eat are the larvae of other flies, that they eat the eggs of other flies. So they're a way of controlling the nasty flies that you don't want. I don't know, in the United States, that would be great if they ate fruit flies or the eggs of fruit flies, because that's what you get with composting in the United States. At least we get fruit flies quite in our compost pile. Now, the other thing is what Chris was talking about is anaerobic digestion. And I just want to show you, you can do this on a huge scale, huge scale. These are biodigesters for palm oil, and I don't know what the ME, I think it's mechanical extraction or something. It's the waste left over after you've extracted the palm oil from the seeds or what have you, from the palms. And you can do it, as you say, on a huge scale. And I've been arguing in South Korea, not South Korea, Malaysia, Indonesia, and I will in Vietnam if I can ever get there. This is what you should be looking at. Sometimes in these countries, the engineers get excited with incinerators because it's big. The engineering companies want big projects, okay? So they love incinerators. But here's another big project. Get your hands into this, and it's much safer, much cleaner, and you're producing a product that people want, not something which people don't want, like fly ash or bottom ash from incinerators. Now, just last week, in preparation for this, I looked on the internet to see, I know one thing. I know that England does not, or Great Britain does not like composting. They're scared stiff of foot and mouth disease and mad cow disease. So they're not encouraging large-scale composting, but they are encouraging anaerobic digestion. Officially, the government is encouraging that. And there's one company here, I like the name, it's rather clever. It's biotech, but they use the CH for the symbol for methane. CH4 is methane. And I was very interested to see what these facilities look like. And I'm thinking of this area. What would these facilities look like in Endicott? And if not in Endicott, what about the nearest green area, nearest farm area? Would people in this area like the look of these facilities? So let's take some shots of them. That's an aerial view of the facility. You see in the front ground, you see that dome thing. That's where the methane is I think produced. Anyway, and collection vehicles, and so it looks like it doesn't look like heavy technology, does it? There's no smokestacks to mention. Down here in the middle to the left, you've got generators which are making electricity on a small scale, but that's the nearest thing you've got to a smokestack. And you can see it fits into agricultural area quite well. Yeah, from a visual point of view, it doesn't look worse than facilities which process, corn seeds, olive oil in Italy, and other large-scale agricultural processing plants. Another aerial view looks fairly clean. Again, fairly clean. I mean, when you look at that, you say, well, that might work in Endicott. It might. I mean, they have the space for that. Visually, it doesn't look that different from some of the existing facilities, nor that. And the EPA has put out, since 2017, it's been putting out annual reports on anaerobic digestion facilities. They've been looking at the different facilities around the United States, and they classify them as standalone digesters, which is what we're talking about here, the photographs. On-farm co-digesters, which would be largely for animal manure, but may be co-opted to include food waste from the municipality, and co-digestion systems at water treatment plants, sewage sludge. Total 209. And handling the capacity 24 million tons per year, standalone digesters of the kind we've been talking about, 20 million tons a year. Now, I was interested to see if we had any in New York, and apparently we do. We have 9 in New York State operating food waste digesting facilities. And one of the things I would recommend that Chris or Deborah, maybe we can organize a trip for interested people to go, and maybe you've done this already. I must apologize. Sometimes I come up these things like a bull in a china shop. I have no idea what people have already done, and I don't mean to tread on people's toes. But I think that's an idea for the future, is to go and have a look at this and smell it. What are the odors like? Because the last thing you want to do is to get people complaining of odors. That's the quickest killer punch. It really is. Again, going back to the community reuse repair operation, which Maria and Ellen and George and others are working on, Christine, the notion of a zero waste research center, the message to industry: if we can't reuse it, recycle it, or compost it, industry shouldn't be making it. We need better industrial design. Well, that better industrial design can start with these zero waste research centers. So at least we can pose the question with the Museum of Bad Design. We can show these embarrass industry, especially if you've got their trademarks and logos on these badly designed things. Then we can get our students to think about it and come up with better designs. So to complete the zero waste, to make one slide which says what is zero waste, it is a combination of community responsibility, essentially at the back end, and industrial responsibility at the front end. Redesign becomes the fourth R. Today, the most important R to talk about is redesign. All the other R's are old hat, except the forgotten C, the composting. So again, coming back to an earlier point, in 2010, 11 years ago now, Rossani Occolini launched the first Rifiuti Zero Waste Research Center in Italy and in Europe. And here is Rossano with some of his primary school students. He's a primary school student during the day and an activist at night and weekends. He's an amazing character, absolutely amazing. You will love him. You will love him. And Ellen, you will love him. He's not married, so if you want looking for a husband, this is the guy for you. I assure you.
Excellent.
Yeah, no, he is the sweetest guy you'll ever meet. We started this dirty process. Would you believe? There's me with my protection, goggles and mask and gloves, and there's Rossano, and there's an industrial designer in the middle looking at the residual waste. This is destined to go to a landfill. This is left over after some of their recycling. And here is a little cleaner operation. This is from Trapani in Zero Waste, where they tried to copy Rossano. That's Patricia Lasciotto, who is a ballerina, a ballet dancer during the day. And the fellow on the right, I think, is a professor. And they are in a much cleaner fashion, looking at more of the kind of things that you would see in a reuse operation than in a residual collection facility. And the first thing, then Enzo Favorino did this for the Agricultural Research Institute. They did this for Capannori. They analyzed the residual fraction. And this is this is the analysis of the 80%, of the 20% left after they recycled or composted 80%. This is the 20% left over that wasn't recycled or composted. And the top one are textiles and leather. Textiles and leather, that's 16.5%. The result of finding that is that they're now collecting some of the leather to try and let textiles to make products locally. The pannolini is not a food stuff, it is a diaper, and that's 14% of the residuals. And that's why they developed the reusable diaper locally manufactured. And then the third thing is kitchen waste. We say, well, why is that ending up in the residuals? Well, that's because that's telling you, you're not only getting information about bad industrial design, but you're getting information about weaknesses in the collection program or the participation of the citizens. Clearly, the message is we need a better job of collecting kitchen waste because the citizens are putting that in the wrong container. So feedback mechanism. So here in their reuse, one of their reuse and repair centers, you see the leather and some of the fabrics that they're collecting to make new products. Now, there's a lot of ambition in this, and how much of these new products sell, I don't know. But the heart is in the right place, and they are creative. And you will love some of the pictures that Rossano will show you of the reuse operation. You will just, it's Italy all over. It's the home of creativity. The most creative people in the world have come from Italy. You think of it, 2,000 years of creative people, artists, scientists, engineers, designers, and just unbelievable. And I've said it many times in Italy, if you got the best designers in the world, if you can't design waste out of the system, nobody can. Oh, there's the reusable pannolini, the reusable diaper. And I'm assured by the father whose baby this is, that it was as easy for him to change that diaper as a disposable one. And I know this is going to be a tough message to sell to Americans, but if you couple this with the information, it costs the average family $2,000 to put a baby through disposable diapers. So there's an economic incentive if we can just hone this message in. This is that guy who's actually a designer looking at the residual fraction and finding these wretched, disposable capsules for beautiful coffee. Lavazza coffee, the single use, what is it called? Keurig is in ours. I want to show you something here. You'll love this. One second. Now, I'm not a, can you see that? I'm not a salesman for Hamilton Beach, but Hamilton Beach has this single serve coffee machine for about 40 bucks, right? Now, let me show you the heart of the beast. Instead, you put 1 cup of water in the back, right? You open this lid, and this will take 2 spoons of coffee. This is regular ground coffee, which I get for $5 from Aldi's. It's German roast. 2 spoonfuls of that. Put it in here. Push on the button, and a little bit longer than a Keurig would take, maybe a couple of minutes, you have a fine cup of coffee. I've been using this for 1.5 years. I've even got my wife using it as well. She sometimes crosses town to go to Starbucks, which drives me crazy, just to get a single cup of coffee. So it works. There is no need for these containers. But I must tell you what Rossano did. He wrote to Lavazza and said, look, we're a zero waste community. We're up to 80% diversion. And yet in our residuals, we keep finding your capsules, and we love your coffee, but can't you get a better design for these, to have one of these plastic things? Again, they billions, we're talking billions of these in Italy every year. Can't you get a better design? Within a couple of years, he got a phone call back the next day from Lavazza saying, why don't our experts talk with your experts to see what we can come up with? Well, after considerable discussion, they came up with a compostable cup, a recyclable one. I hate the recyclable ones in America. It's awful. You have to tear this fabric away from the plastic just to get the plastic, and it's a real mess. But meanwhile, other companies have come up with these kind of machines. Oh, you can get, Keurig. You can get Keurig now, which has a reusable thing which you put into the slot. And I was using that too to begin with. But I think that this Hamilton Beach one is much better. I think there are other single cup systems, and perhaps others can talk about this at the end. There are those Lavazza again. Okay, this is the letter that he sent to Lavazza. And I think it's a very good story. I think how a relatively small community, we're talking about 100,000 people, can wag the tail of a multinational corporation to get them to change behavior. It just underlines that these multinational corporations, whoever they are sensitive to public image. They put a lot of money into their image, and if their image is in conflict, the good story they want to tell about this in conflict with the planet or the local community, we can work on that. So Zero Waste Research Center involve local communities, universities. We have professors from BOCES and Binghamton interested. Locate the center in the community. Just a pet peeve of mine. I don't want to see these zero waste research centers in universities. I don't want the ivory tower looking after. I want the community to be involved in this. Yes, if the professors and students want to get involved, come downtown, get your hands dirty, see what communities are dealing with. You're going to write paper after paper on idealistic solutions. Write your papers based upon the practical knowledge of the problems on a community-wide basis and learn. If you get a good solution, you're going to be helping that community, you're going to be creating jobs, and you're going to be creating small businesses. And you can be part of that whilst you're still a student. To me, that's a valuable integration. That's what I mean about academic responsibility. You know, in New Zealand, they have a zero waste research operation in McMaster's University near Wellington, I think. Again, very good, but not downtown. In Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur, the University of Malaysia has a nice zero waste operation. They have anaerobic digestion. They do a lot of recycling, but I want it downtown. You examine the residual fraction, you identify non-reusable objects and non-recyclable materials, you recommend better industrial designs. The other thing you do is to research via internet all the things which communities are doing to reduce waste so that you learn from everybody else. We don't all have to reinvent the wheel. What are communities doing in banning single-use plastics? There are communities banning plastic straws, plastic lids, plastic sachets for shampoo and stuff, plastic bottles, you name it, plastic knives and forks. These are all being banned in many, many different countries. We need to see how they go about it, what works. Other communities, what they're doing to minimize waste production. There's a lot of research that could go on now, and we have students able to do it, I think. Okay, I don't think I need to go any further on this, because what I would like to do now is to go back to you and get your feedback, particularly from Deborah, on some of the things I've talked about in Broome County. Where do you see this going? If there's some of these ideas, what can we run with? Deborah?
I think you brought up a lot of good ideas, and I think they are programs that have potential. It's for us, for the county itself, we looked at having a composting facility for several years. One of the things you mentioned, though, it's very hard to site a compost facility. So there's been at least 2 other times when a private individual has tried to do so, and they've needed rezoning of an area, and they haven't been able to get it rezoned because the surrounding community was so against and so afraid of any kind of odor issues or anything, truck traffic, that it kind of sunk that project. As far as anaerobic digestion, we've had just a brief overview of that. It's not something the county itself has taken a deep dive and looked into. I think a couple of years ago, I want to say the Endicott wastewater treatment plant had put together a proposal for a grant opportunity. And I believe part of that was anaerobic digestion, which they could then possibly incorporate food waste into.
Good. Okay. What about, have you looked at vermiculture? And I don't know, Chris, maybe you know something about this. Is this something that you could envisage happening in the city? Vermiculture? Could we get an old building and start doing vermiculture in that? Or do you see problems with that approach?
That's not something we've looked at as far as the county on a large scale. It's something we promote and we provide educational outreach on, especially if we have any kind of residents or a school or anything that wants to start like a vermicomposting bin. But we haven't looked at it. That's something that would still need to go through the process with DEC as far as registration and permitting. And again, it would be, citing a facility.
Okay. And what about the vines? Does anybody know whether vines would welcome the idea of combining their lovely community gardens with an emphasis on community composting? That they actually encourage.
I think they currently do.
They do.
I think they do have some community gardens. but they also have that composting component as part of it. I do know we've worked with CCE with Josh, and he has started a community compost program on a small scale as well to see how it goes.
That's great. I see we have Isabella on the call, and Isabella is at the end of what to do with that food once you've grown it. If we get some lovely community gardens in Endicott, Isabella will come in with her friends and make some absolutely glorious Italian dishes for the community party that will follow. So community composting produces community gardens, which produces community food, which produces a wonderful community feast day. That would be the idea.
Well, if I could mention a few things, I guess.
Go ahead.
I'll start with the vines because I'm very familiar with vines. Actually, we, in a way, Nest started vines only indirectly because they were started with under a program under us. So it was, and then we housed it in my church. Vines, their offices are in our church, and actually, interestingly, because our church is very involved in a program to serving meals to poor people, and we basically cut a deal with Vines that if they would compost our food scraps coming off of that program, that was their rent, helping us with our food scraps, and it was an excellent partnership. Mm-hmm. In terms of terminology, it's interesting to me that a lot of the people in the waste field talk about composting and then anaerobic digestion. In the scientific field, basically, both are composting, and it's just a matter of is it aerobic or anaerobic? Mm-hmm. One is with air and one is without air. Yeah. Though I mention anaerobic in my presentations, it's more for completeness more than anything else. I know it's an option out there, though I tend to favor aerobic composting. That's when you're mixing it with air, you actually tend to have a lot less odor. Actually, the odors come more through the anaerobic process. When you and you can see that in your own compost piles. Like if you loaded it with a lot of grass clippings just sort of condense and cut off the air from everything else, and then then your compost pile starts to smell. So if you're going the anaerobic route, you really have to have a lot of air controls on it to make sure it's that those odors are controlled. You have to control it for aerobic digestion too, but nowhere near as much. The other thing with aerobic digestion is actually it heats the piles more. That activity actually heats the piles and kills off pathogens, where the anaerobic processes are much cooler, and actually to have a safe product, you actually have to heat it up a little bit to sterilize it. So like I say, as much as I put anaerobic composting in my slides just to say that option is out there, but I prefer aerobic composting. I also like to say, in our landfills, we're composting whether we like it or not, in a way. That's actually again it's the anaerobic digestion that produces the methane. That's when the organics are decomposing in the absence of air, And that's why landfills give off methane. Um,
Ted, you've been very quiet, very patient. How do you react to some of these ideas about zero waste? Can you see Endicott playing a role here in how, for example, do you react to the notion of a large reuse and repair operation in Endicott?
That's the one that I'm really interested in. I had a question of, have you had any progress in finding a building anywhere?
Ellen, can you answer that question? You still on? Ellen Taberry?
Yes, yes. You're talking about the reuse and repair, finding a building?
Yeah.
There are definitely some right in the Washington Avenue area that we are interested in, but we really can't do much until we get grant money, and we can't do much with that until we have a business plan. So it's sort of it's down the road a little bit. But there definitely are some very interesting buildings. We found one or two that are not even for sale, but there's other ones that either are for rent or for sale. So we're going back and forth on whether we want to rent or sell and how big we'd want it. And do we start small and then end up in a couple different ones? But I would say there's definitely a lot of options in Endicott.
Okay.
What about the nonprofit I did?
The fact that there has been an MOU.
Hold on, Chris. Ted had a follow-up question.
Sure.
Ted, what was your question?
Oh, the other question I had was, what about the nonprofit idea where once you had a building, if you bought it, then you would not have to pay taxes on it?
Yeah, I think the business plan is heading for a non-profit.
It is for a nonprofit, but I'm not clear on the tax piece. I think we would have to pay some taxes, but not. I'm not 100% sure, Ted, but I can bring that back to my.
Well, for instance, we have the museum on the avenue, and 60% of it is used by the museum, so we don't have to pay tax on that 60%. But then we have two tenants, which is 40%. So we pay tax on 40% of the building. But if we used it, if it was all a museum, we wouldn't have to pay tax, property tax.
You would have to pay sales tax though, and when you start selling your items, right?
Yes, definitely.
The public would pay you sales tax, but when you bought something, you would not have to pay sales tax.
Okay.
Okay. So do you own that building? Does the Heritage Museum own that building, Ted?
Yeah, the Historic Society.
Okay. And then the Historic Society has two tenants that pay them rent. Is that correct?
Yeah, and those two tenants take up 40% of the building.
Okay.
So we pay property tax, but for instance, we of course we have nonprofit status, so we can go to Home Depot, Lowe's, any of these stores. You fill out a little form, that you're a nonprofit, and then anything you buy there, you never pay sales tax.
Okay, that's great. That's great to know.
Okay, I'd like to handle some logistics now. Right now, my wife and I are planning to fly to England on September the 1st. We won't be back to October the 8th. Those are our plans. However, looking at the ominous news of what this Delta variant is doing, even to people that have been vaccinated. We've been vaccinated, but we are very concerned about getting on a plane to England right now, and also, during the travel in particular. So I'm not sure what our plans are going to be in the future. So my role in trying to facilitate these meetings is going to have a major hit. And I'll let you know next week what's going to happen on our end. Meanwhile,
I heard something interesting today. The paper said they're going to start with this booster shot September 20, but a friend of mine went to Walgreens today and got a booster shot.
Wow.
Oh,
Wow.
okay. Well, that's something that we would definitely be interested in. I'm going to tell Ellen later on.
As long as it's been 8 months since you had your second shot.
We got our first shot in April.
April, May, June, July, August. Nope, not long enough.
No. Okay. Anyway, we're concerned. But the first question is Rossano Ercolini. I included him in the email I sent out, but I haven't formally invited him, although I don't expect he'll say no if he's available. But would you all on this call, would you be available, say 2 o'clock? Actually, if it's 2 o'clock, we could do it either Wednesday or Thursday of next week. Anybody have a problem with 2 o'clock?
On Thursday,
Yeah, we start
next Thursday,
yeah.
that's okay with me.
Deborah?
Paul, I can't because I work
You're
and I,
working.
You work, yeah.
yeah, and I can't really take breaks and I
No,
can't
no.
have my
I've
phone.
never seen you down there yet.
I'm in the kitchen.
I look all over the place. I can't find you. In the donut
She's all
kitchen, you
full
mean?
of powder. She's
I'm
all
in the-
full of powder.
I'm gonna be camping. I'm gonna be camping in the Adirondacks. No
Oh.
Wi-Fi.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Well, we could see, I do have everybody's email address now. Sorry, Jerry, what about you? Jerry and Deborah, would you be able to make 2 o'clock?
I would be able to.
You would,
I-
okay, great.
yeah.
And Jerry?
I would be able either, you're saying the 24th or the 26th or
Uh,
25th, I mean.
Yeah, a week from today.
Yes, at this point in time, yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's a start. But I think once I send an email around and talk more about Rossano Ercolini, we're going to get more people from Endicott who will want to meet him if they're available. And Isabella, I'm sure you can get a few friends who are in the,
I shall.
yeah, okay. You can talk food. You can talk food.
So Paul, you're not leaving. So you'll be here. You'll be in attendance next week at this meeting, correct?
Yes, what day is it again? 20?
4th.
26th, isn't it? Thursday, 26th?
Oh, Thursday?
Yeah.
Today's Thursday. Today's the 19th.
So it'd be 26. Yes, I will. be
26.
here. We would, as our current plans, we are going for a few days to New Hampshire before we take the plane to the States. So yeah, I'll still be here on the 26th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Okay.
26. So Paul, you and I are going to have to figure out, you're probably going to have to log in as me.
Well,
into
meanwhile,
Zoom.
because Ellen and I have been organizing other Zoom calls, we've now got a contract for unlimited time. So we can,
Okay.
I'll set up the Zoom call for next Thursday. So don't even worry about it.
Okay. All right. Great.
The key thing is I have everybody's email so I can give a separate invitation. But then we'll be looking for somebody else to carry the torch for a few weeks. Or do we all want a holiday? You decide. I mean, I think people have expressed so incredibly patient listening to us talking about waste.
My family in Italy, Paul, my family in Italy, Milan and Puglia, southern part of Italy, Turin, they're all so shocked that we're so far behind in this composting. They've
Yes.
been doing it for years.
Yes, yes, yes.
We've
Wow.
got to give a move on.
Yeah. Well, yes, we know Italy is very mixed. They have some of the worst waste management in the world and some of the best. And I've been,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, we had a incredible experience with Naples. You know, Naples is notorious for the mafia and
Yeah,
terrible waste management.
yeah.
Our strategy for getting zero waste into Napoli was to surround Napoli. We got 20, I think it was 21 communities on the outskirts of Turin, small communities around Naples, all declaring zero waste. And we just shamed the mayor and the vice mayor of Napoli that they had to go along with this movement. So eventually we got Napoli to declare zero waste. And of course, they've had a hell of a time dealing with the mafia and getting facilities. The big issue is you get people separating. That's not a problem. But then where do you send the organic waste? And often they have to send it several hundred kilometers to the nearest composting facility. Big problem. But it was such ironic situation of having been on demonstrations and marches in Naples to get the administration to stop building incinerators and start doing the right thing, to suddenly find myself talking inside the municipal building with the mayor and the vice mayor sitting beside me. And when I'd finished, they then declared, yes, Napoli is going to go zero waste. Just absolutely amazing. So
Wow.
the thing about Italy, as you know, as some of you know, it's very much communities run by mayors. If you get a really strong mayor and he's got some support in the council, they're very quick to make a decision and move. And then they'll put the machinery of the municipal authorities behind it. And one of the big things in Italy is, what is the relationship between the municipal authority and the waste company, the private waste company? And if they can get the private waste company going along with the zero waste plan, then things really happen. And that's what happened in Capannori. You had a really great activist, Enzo Rossano. You had a very good mayor, a very courageous mayor, opposed to incineration and quickly adopted zero waste. And then you had a waste company called a sheet who went along with everything. And their promotion, all their literature was beautifully designed. It was like comic characters. They made every collecting container became a comic figure in a cartoon. And so their ability to communicate with the citizens, to get the citizens on side, what a combination, inspiration. But anyway, Rossano can talk more about that next Thursday at 2:00, assuming that he's not on holiday and assuming that he's willing to do it. And I will let you know.
Paul, can you record it?
Yes, of course I will. And that will be
great.
probably a popular item. And
Yes.
you recorded this, and if you would send this to me, and then
Yes.
when I send out that invitation, I'll link them to this call so they know what the context of Rossano talking.
Okay, great.
Any other last words?
He should be in town because Ferragosto is done. Ferragosto is the big holiday in Italy,
Oh,
15th. So it should be done. He should be home.
wow. I love Italy so much. This is the longest stretch since 1996 that I haven't been in Italy. 85 times I've been there. And,
I envy you. I've only been there 4 times. And I was born there.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And I feel the same with, Endicott has inherited a lot of that.
Yes.
That cultural aspect of it. My wife and I were tickled the other day when we drove to one of those park celebrations, one of the music things on at this time, actually. And I saw the center strip of that road in Little Italy is red, green, and whatever.
Yes.
I thought that was really cute. And
Yeah.
Are you coming to Gusto Festival the 27th? It's a week from tomorrow on Oak Hill Avenue.
Oh my God, that's a terrible thing to miss. But my son is coming from California with his new grandbaby.
Yeah.
They're in New Hampshire. We're going to have a little few days in New Hampshire before we fly either to the United States or we drive back to Binghamton with our tail beneath our legs because we haven't flown to England. Anyway, thanks everybody once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you,
Safe
everybody.
travel.